Too many deaths or not enough of them? And what happened to Peter's helmet? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 may have just touched down in theaters, and fans have thoughts. Spoilers ahead for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. James Gunn wanting to work with his wife Jennifer Holland is apparently the internet's equivalent of wearing socks with sandals to the mall. The usual suspects of film Twitter have painted the narrative that Gunn always finds a way to cast Holland in his productions, and they see it as a form of Hollywood nepotism. Considering Holland appears as Administrator Kwol in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, her cameo has stirred up the conversation again. Truth be told, Kwol's role in the story is minor, and it isn't like Gunn threw out an established performer to make room for his wife on screen. Some fans have come to Holland and Gunn's defense, pointing out how the filmmaker has often cast the same actors in his movies before, and there has never been any complaints about it. One tweeted, "It's no secret there's a subset of geek fandom that are unashamedly misogynistic. But the hate for Jennifer Holland being a James Gunn mainstay is so clearly sexist when you just start naming Michael Rooker, Sean Gunn, Nathan Fillion, and so on." In the build-up to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, fans are excited by the prospect of seeing Adam Warlock make his live-action debut. The character had been teased before in the MCU, but he would now be portrayed in flesh and blood by Will Poulter. But this version of the being first introduced as him in the pages of 1967's Fantastic Four comics is much different than fans might have imagined. One Redditor said Poulter was a weird choice to play the character, and added that the makeup was, quote, TNG side character tier.
It became pretty clear they weren't going for perfect when they cast me. I knew they were going in a different direction with the role.
For some viewers, the role isn't as substantial as it should have been, with Poulter's Warlock featuring scarcely in the film. Another Redditor said, "Nothing against his performance, but I feel like you could cut him out of the movie and nothing would be lost. His connection to the plot was very flimsy." Others are not impressed by how his personality has been diluted here, with James Gunn making him a comedic and somewhat childish fish-out-of-water character. One Redditor described him as yet another himbo idiot. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the audience is introduced to the Golden High Priestess of the Sovereign, a race of beings created by the High Evolutionary. Ayesha is a minor antagonist, but she plays a vital role in the creation of Adam Warlock, which is teased in the post-credits scene of the film.
I think I shall call him Adam.
In Guardians 3, Ayesha returns with her son, Adam, in tow as they do the High Evolutionary's evil bidding. Unfortunately, she is blown to smithereens on Counter-Earth and presumably doesn't survive the events of the movie. While Ayesha does have a few sporadic scenes scattered throughout, there are a few fans puzzled by her overall purpose in this storyline. As one Redditor suggested, there was an opportunity to see both her and Warlock face off against the High Evolutionary and bring closure to that part of the story. Instead, she becomes glorified cannon fodder. Since the first time fans met Rocket, it's clear he went through some trauma in his past. He doesn't like to talk about it, and his history has been largely shrouded in secrecy, until now. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 shows him as a tiny and cute-as-a-button baby raccoon that becomes a part of High Evolutionary's sick experiments. It's made even worse when the viewers meet Rocket's three new adorable friends, Lila the Otter, Teefs the Walrus, and Floor the Rabbit, and see what has been done to them as well. Sure, they are upbeat about life in general, but there's no disputing they have been tortured. While James Gunn doesn't get graphic in the depiction of animal abuse, it's the things left unsaid that leave an unsettling feeling in the pit of the stomach. This hasn't been lost on the fans either, as the animal lovers have expressed how difficult it is to watch these scenes and not be impacted by it. Of course, this is the intention of the filmmakers. Animal lovers on Reddit said they were brought to tears, with one sharing, "When Lila was shot, I looked over and saw my wife crying." The MCU loves to sprinkle its films and TV shows with humorous moments and jokes as a way to provide levity to the stories. The Guardians have always been the biggest jokers of the pack, and their appearances have contained the most amount of humor out of all of the MCU projects. While the trailers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 showed off a darker, serious tone than most fans might have expected, no one should have been surprised that the film would find a way to incorporate some laughs. Most of the comic relief comes from the interactions between Drax the Destroyer and Mantis. But there's also a recurring gag between Cosmo the Space Dog and Kraglin. Some, however, have criticized the film for having lame jokes. One moviegoer tweeted, "A good chunk of the jokes were pretty unfunny, and it seems like Gunn didn't know what to do with a lot of the cast." Another said they, quote, "cringed during a lot of the humor this time around." Make no mistake about it, comic book fans are among the most perceptive people in the world. They miss nothing and will let filmmakers know if something is amiss. One of the hottest debates surrounding Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is about the lack of Star-Lord's helmet. Unlike the past movies, Peter Quill doesn't utilize it here, and many fans have wondered why it is missing from the action. It is considered an important part of the hero's attire, so it is in the same league as Captain America and his mighty shield. A Reddit thread about the topic has been started with one commenter suggesting that Star-Lord wouldn't have almost died in space had he activated his helmet. Another user countered the argument by saying that Quill and the others left in a hurry to try and save Rocket, so he may have forgotten his helmet back at the base. The Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 trailer promised sadness. Fans feared the worst for a member of the crew, with most presuming Rocket would be the one to perish. And because this marks the end of the trilogy, it was always likely that someone would get killed as part of a narrative beat. In the end, all the Guardians are safe, and no one heads off to Valhalla to meet up with Jane Foster.
I see you're dead now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the other characters are quite as lucky. In one of the most heart-shattering scenes of the film, Lila, Teefs, and Floor don't get to see the blue sky with Rocket as he prepares to escape in a flashback sequence. They might have been fresh characters introduced in this film, but these three wholesome creatures leave a significant mark with their kindness. Many viewers have expressed how horrified they were to see the events unfold. According to one Redditor, "I just knew Lila, Teefs, and Floor were going to die, but their deaths really got me." Forget about Peter Parker telling Tony Stark that he doesn't feel so good. This is now officially the saddest moment in a Marvel movie. There are several moments in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 where James Gunn pulls the rug out from under the viewers and makes everyone believe that someone is a goner. A particularly harrowing scene occurs toward the end of the film when Star-Lord doesn't escape in time and floats through space. His body begins to freeze and his face blows to look like a pufferfish. Adam Warlock becomes a hero as he flies out to Peter Quill and saves him. The puffiness disappears from Quill's face not too long afterward, and it seems like it was only intended for a gag. Even so, there are fans who don't understand the point of this. One Redditor suggested that it made Quill look more like Pedro Pascal, while another reminded everyone that this wouldn't have happened had he worn his helmet.
We'll all fly away together. One last time.
The ending of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 signifies the end of a chapter and the start of a new one. The core team is dismantled, as the majority of the Guardians go off in separate directions to find what they need in their lives. In their place, a new set of Guardians led by Rocket steps out in the mid-credit scene, presumably as the new iteration of the group for the MCU. While it was always clear that this would be James Gunn and many cast members' last hurrah, this turn of events still upset a lot of fans. One Twitter user said, "Was sad that the group splits up, but I'm hopeful to see what the future holds. Farewells are never easy, but this wasn't necessarily a goodbye, more of a see you later. Considering that all of these characters are still alive in the MCU, there's always a chance that their paths could cross again." Each member of the Guardians of the Galaxy suffers in the third film, but they all get their happily ever after in the end. We see some strong character progressions and developments as the core characters realize there are aspects of their lives they need to work on independently. But they are all able to sail off into the sunset and smile at their friends while doing so. Some fans feel let down by this decision to give everyone a peaceful ending. They expected bloodshed and waterfalls of tears as the group got ripped apart and destroyed on screen. The fans also aren't too pleased by the fake-outs. We're led to believe that Drax, Star-Lord, and Rocket have been wiped out for good. One Redditor explained, "I'm fine with no member dying even though they hinted so strongly at it, but doing 3 fake-out deaths is just overkill, in my opinion, especially having one straight-up flatline." Some even negatively compared this to Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, which annoyed fans by doing a similar thing. Be that as it may, this is the MCU, not Game of Thrones. Unlike George R.R. Martin, Kevin Feige isn't casually killing off main characters. In the post-credit scene of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, text flashes on the screen stating, "The legendary Star-Lord will return," while the mid-credit scene showcases a new version of the team. What this indicates is that the Guardians story isn't quite over yet. Sure, the original incarnation of the squad might not be teaming up anytime soon, but there are more cosmic tales left in the MCU tank. While this will be good news to many fans, there are others who are annoyed by this. One Twitter user bemoans the decision, explaining how the lack of a decisive conclusion is more harmful than good here. They said, "As much as I liked it, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 highlights a major problem with the MCU at the moment. There's no real finality to anything, and at that point, what's the point?" It's a fair comment. With no endpoint in sight, all decisions are simply about moving the franchise forward, not necessarily toward anything impactful. On the other hand, the cinematic shared universe is about the journey, not the destination. So it's a different kind of storytelling model.